Well, let's talk more about colonialism and its impact on the development of Islamic thoughts and ideas. I would assume, judging from what you already said, had a very negative effect on them. Am I
Yes,
right or wrong?
of course, no, that's true. The Westerners did not see jihad except historically in Middle Ages when they found the Muslims suddenly in Spain and then going to southern France. This is in the Middle Ages. In earlier modern times, they find the Ottomans putting Vienna under siege. So this sort of expansion or this sort of confrontation with the West coincided together or met together in the Western mentality. Then in modern times, when they attempted or they tried to colonize the Muslim countries, they found the word and they found the mobilization under jihad once more to confront or to defend the Muslims against the West. So in both cases, although the difference was there, that in the first time in Middle Ages it was an expansion, and probably they may be justified to be frightened by people coming to attack places in Europe, while there was no justified reason. It was mere expansion at that time. But in modern times, it is really just self-defense.
How did colonialism impact the development of Islamic thoughts and ideas?
It inspired, of course, it revived jihad, inspired the Muslim leaders, intellectuals, religious leaders to mobilize the masses to fight colonialism. It inspires also self-assertion and and the awareness of their identity and the different and realizing the danger of the aggression. All this, of course, colonialism revived this thing because jihad, after a certain period, became something historical. Muslims had a strong entity in the Middle East, in the Middle Ages, and accordingly they didn't need this sort of jihad. They need the inner jihad against themselves, against the ego. But facing enemies, when it happened in the time of colonialism, it revives the emotions and the teachings of jihad again, and they were mobilized, and the term began to be used or reused to defend themselves. And accordingly, the West began to realize the seriousness of the word jihad. It is a magic word which brings up all the energy, all the capabilities, all the steam which was under the cock. It brings it up and explodes in the faces of the colonialists.
Professor, what was the relationship between faith-based activism and nationalistic movements in the quest to gain independence?
In the beginning, you cannot really mark out or distinguish the nationalistic attitude as we know from the political science and history of Europe in modern ages, nationalism in the sense of the nation state. It was an emotional feeling of defending your home. So nationalism in the beginning was connected with religion. Religion is inspiring and is teaching self-defense, and you have to defend your own home and your own people. So they were joined and combined together without any sort of distinction, let alone sort of difference and confrontation sometimes. Later, after having independence, then nationalism began to speak up about itself and to nurture the feelings of certain nation in a certain state, and then distinction began to appear. Are we just related to this nation, to this country, to this piece of land, or we are more than this and we are Muslims related to God?
Well, let's use India and Egypt and Algeria as examples historically. And can you briefly describe the character and activities of the major Muslim movements and their struggle with colonialism?
Yes, of course, Islam inspires the people in these areas, and in the same time we should notice something which is very important, and that the non-Muslims cooperated also with the inspiration of their own religion in a joint front against aggression with different religious motivations. The same national motivation or home motivation is the same. But you find Hindus inspired by Hinduism and by a Hindu leader like Gandhi and Nehru, cooperating with Muslims in defending India against British colonialism. You find Egyptians, Muslims, and Christians cooperating together, and many meetings were met in the well-known revolution against the British after the end of World War I, 1919. You find the meetings were held in the Mosque of Al-Azhar, and you find the patriarch of the Christians of the Copts in Egypt with the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, the rector of Al-Azhar, together on the pulpit in the mosque, talking to all Egyptians to struggle against the British colonialism. In Algeria, of course, it is dominantly Muslim, and you find the Jihad was the only magic that convinced the people to go in a long struggle against a well-equipped and well-developed country like France, which used the helicopters, used artillery, used every modern weapon against people who haven't anything except their primitive weapons.
Well, besides struggling to gain independence, what changes did this movement try to bring about, and to what extent was it successful?
Well, activism changed after getting independence into request or demand for justice, for reform, justice in all its dimensions: political justice, social justice, and development in all its dimensions, education, material development, and in general reforming the government, reforming the state. So activism, instead of fighting the external enemy, they began to require from their rulers, now national rulers, to be just and to take serious care about reform. And then in that time something happened. They realized that after independence, this sort of combination of nationalistic and religious tones in a polyphony or in harmony during the struggle against colonialism began to be distinguished. The two tones began to be distinguished when the nationalists began to declare a secular state and to distance themselves from religion. They benefited from religion during the struggle. Now, in power, they wanted to distance themselves from religion and to be secular. So the masses thought that they were betrayed, they were deceived. They sacrificed all what they have, including their lives, of course, on the top, for what they mean, including the faith, that they want Islamic justice, they want Islamic law, they want a sort of self-identity for the independent state, to maintain the same identity, Islamic identity of them. Now they see that the political identity of the state is different. And they began to hear a different tone. Let us become modern. Let us follow the nationalistic and the secular way of Europe. So they felt that they were betrayed, and some activism, internal activism began to happen. No, we wanted to be Muslims. We wanted to maintain our values. We wanted to maintain our identity. And of course, what encourages and nurtures this, that secularism was not just a political trend. It became also a socio-cultural trend. Let us be westernized in our values, in our traditions, in our families, in dealing with one another. And of course, this contradicted some values, Islamic values, about morality, about relation between or moral interests. They find some looseness in the name of secularism. So the clash became not only political, not only something legal. We want a secular state, but it will not differ so much in its goals for the benefit of the people from an Islamic state. So we can argue, because it becomes a theoretical matter, and practically speaking, we have all the benefits of a religious state under a secular name. No, it was not like this. They saw a deviation in the family values, in the business values, allowing fraud, cheating, many things. So they think that they are facing a danger, and the society is in danger, and the Islamic activism turns its direction to the internal front and to maintaining the Islamic values within the society and within the state.